The Story of Herbert George Wells by Rajan Patel. From 1866 to 1946, one of the most impactful authors on current-day writing lived. His name, Herbert George Wells, son of Joseph and Sarah Wells, and a sibling to Frances and Francis Wells. Unfortunately, H.G. Wells was diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, so food-wise, what the family could afford had to be closely watched. H.G. survived through a horrible accident that sent him to sit in a hospital bed. Since he had so much time to do this, and this tragic event sprouted his love for reading. He had loved science since he was young, and that would later come into effect in his style of writing. H.G. Wells maintained a good education while suffering through poverty. Wells earned a scholarship to the Royal College of Science in 1884. This was a pretty honorable college where he was studying biology and taught by T.H. Huxley. He graduated 4 years later in 1888. Wells was a science teacher for a while until he got health problems, which made him quit. Wells's first published book was a biology textbook in 1893. H.G. Wells was very tempted for relationships. He was married twice, once with his cousin Isabel, and a second time with a former friend, A.B. Robin. Herbert's love for his cousin didn't last very long, but was never officially divorced. While his marriages were going on, he had a total of 2 children with 2 other women. His children's names were Anna Jane, born in 1909, and Anthony West in 1914. Wells had an oddly driven personality where his main focus was sexual rather than educational or for a constructive cause. Herbert was extremely hard on himself when he didn't need to be. H.G. was mostly known for his sci-fi novels. He basically invented them. He laid the foundation for modern-day sci-fi books. Even today, he is still known as the father of science fiction. While he was amazing at writing science fiction, he wrote history and comedy books. The most famous works he wrote were The Time Machine in 1895, The Wonderful Visit also in 1895, The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1896, The Invisible Man in 1897, and The War of the Worlds in 1898. This was one of his very first books to be published, so he started off on a great foot. Wells got so good at being an author, he was given a Nobel Prize of Literature several times. He became confident in himself, so he ran for Parliament and failed. Several historical events took place that would affect Wells's life a lot. Being a scientist instilled with hope into him. 4 or 5 of these books were so good they had movies based on them. He wrote few books other than science fiction, and some were the outline of history, the work, wealth, and happiness of mankind, and a modern utopia. The most famous of all of Wells's books was The Time Machine. This was a science fiction book based on a British scientist finding a time machine and exploring evolution throughout the ages. When World War I occurs, he almost loses all hope in humanity advancement. When the break of the Second World War came along, he had lost all faith whatsoever in humanity. He was very descriptive when he wrote books based on how the world was functioning, whether it was either of the world wars. H.G. Wells has influenced a lot of people. What is amazing about Wells is that he really sends a message with all of his books, and they are easy to learn. He's so creative and advanced compared to other British scientists of his time. Most authors and almost everyone that has read his books was influenced in some way. He opens up perspective on things. His diction is rather extraordinary. He hasn't influenced in just his sci-fi books, but in all genres that he has written in. His legacy still lives as he was called the father of science fiction.